The bobcat limped to the clinic, but its eyes were more terrified than its wounds. A blood-soaked bobcat collapsed at the clinic door at sunrise, not wild, but desperate, with the pleading eyes of a mother. But when the ultrasound lit up the screen, everyone froze. Curled beside the tiny, flickering heartbeat of her unborn kitten was a sharp metal bullet. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The fog lay thick over Red Pine that morning, the kind that swallowed sound and softened every shape until the world seemed half asleep. Dr. Lauren Hayes pushed open the back door of the Pine Ridge Veterinary Clinic, with her first cup of coffee still warming her hands. She had planned to enjoy a quiet moment on the porch before the day began, but the quiet was broken before she even took a sip. At first, she heard only a faint scraping, like something dragging itself over gravel. Then a low, strained sound drifted through the mist, too deep to be a house cat, too soft to be a threat. Instinct made her step forward, narrowing her eyes as a silhouette emerged from the gray veil. A bobcat, full-grown but battered and trembling, limped toward her with uneven, painful steps. Its coat was matted with mud and streaked with blood, one paw hanging just above the ground. But what stopped Lauren cold wasn't the injuries. It was the way the animal looked at her. Ears lowered, breath shuddering, gaze locked on hers, as if pleading for something she couldn't yet understand. Wild bobcats didn't do this. They hid, fought, fled. They didn't walk straight into the arms of a human unless something had already stripped away every ounce of fear. "Easy, easy, sweetheart," Lauren whispered, lowering her coffee and raising both hands in a slow gesture of calm. The bobcat didn't flinch. It simply sagged forward, its strength failing as it reached the first wooden plank of the porch. The sight struck so hard that Lauren's heartbeat stumbled. Whatever had driven this creature to her doorstep wasn't just injury, it was desperation. Inside the clinic, the soft rattle of metal trays signaled that someone else had arrived early. Evan Cruz stepped out of the surgical prep room, startled when he saw Lauren kneeling just outside the door. "Is that Lauren? What are you doing out there?" he asked, already moving to assist when he spotted the injured cat. "She came to us," Lauren said quietly, her voice thick with disbelief. "She walked all the way to the door." Together, they eased the bobcat inside, Lauren guiding the front, while Evan supported the back half of its body. The animal tensed once, a reflex of fear or pain, but it never snapped or hissed. Instead, it released a shaky breath, almost as if relieved. The warmth of the clinic seemed to settle over its trembling frame like a blanket. Evan locked the door behind them, his brows still drawn with confusion, as he grabbed a thick towel to help steady the animal on the exam table. "Lauren, this doesn't make sense," he murmured. "She shouldn't let us touch her. Not like this. Not unless—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Lauren felt the rest of it echo in her chest. Not unless she had no other choice. Under the bright exam lights, the bobcat's condition became clearer. Scratches and bruises covered its hindquarters, and its breathing came in tight, shallow bursts. Every time Lauren touched near the ribs, the animal flinched, not with anger, but with something closer to fear. Still, its eyes never left hers. They held a strange mixture of pain and intention, as if the animal was trying desperately to tell her something urgent. "Look at this," Lauren said softly. A trail of dried blood crossed the bobcat's flank, but the wound beneath wasn't the jagged tear of a trap or the slice of barbed wire. It was rougher, deeper, angled. Something had struck it with force. Evan leaned closer, frowning. This wasn't an accident. Something did this. Lauren nodded, but her thoughts were already drifting elsewhere, to the way the bobcat had limped toward her, to the quiet, desperate sounds it had made, to the unmistakable awareness in its gaze. Wild animals didn't ask for help. They didn't come to a human doorstep unless some deeper instinct overrode every natural law. And yet, this one had. As they worked, the clinic grew still, holding its breath like the dawn outside. The bobcat's chest heaved with effort, but it didn't resist their touch. Lauren moved slowly, speaking in a steady voice meant to soothe even if the animal couldn't understand the words. "You found your way here for a reason," she murmured. "We'll figure out what that reason is." But as the bobcat's gaze softened, a flicker of something else appeared in its eyes. Not fear, not pain. Something closer to longing. Something that stirred an unease deep inside Lauren's ribs. She didn't know it yet, but the creature lying before them had brought more than its broken body through the fog that morning. It had brought a mystery, one that would pull them into a story far larger, far more dangerous, and far more heartbreaking than either she or Evan imagined. And somewhere beneath the bobcat's ragged breathing, beneath the thrum of its racing heart, an unspoken truth waited to surface. Whatever happened to this animal, it wasn't finished yet. Lauren steadied her hands as she and Evan worked under the warm glow of the exam lights. The fog outside still pressed against the windows, turning the clinic into a small island of clarity in an otherwise muted morning. The bobcat lay on the table, its sides rising and falling with shallow, uneven breaths. Every so often, its ears twitched as if listening for something far away, some echo only it could hear. Lauren felt the weight of its trust, rare, fragile, and unexpected, rest heavily on her shoulders. She gently cleaned the first wound, expecting the typical signs of a trap: torn edges, a crushing bruise, embedded fibers. But the flesh here was ripped in a way she had never quite seen. It wasn't the pattern left by wire or metal teeth. It was deeper on one side, angled, as though something had sliced through while the bobcat twisted desperately to break free. The muscle beneath was hot and inflamed. Not fresh, but not old either. Something had happened recently, within hours, not days. "Evan," she said softly, "look at this." He stepped closer, his brow furrowing as he studied the wound. "That's not a snare," he murmured. "Not even close. Something else did that." The bobcat murmured, a soft, breathy sound that tugged at Lauren's chest. Not aggression, not fear. Something closer to sorrow or pleading. She paused, watching the animal's eyes. Wild cats didn't vocalize like this unless communicating with their young or in extreme distress. Lauren swallowed hard. "Why would you come to us?" she whispered under her breath. She moved her hands to the bobcat's ribcage, checking for fractures. When her fingertips brushed the lower abdomen, the animal tensed sharply, not in attack but in a protective curl, as though guarding something beneath her ribs. Protective, not defensive. The distinction hit Lauren instantly. She exchanged a glance with Evan, who had noticed the reaction too. "That wasn't a pain response," he said quietly. "It's like she's shielding something." Lauren nodded slowly. "I felt a flutter, a movement, but it wasn't muscle spasm." She steadied her breath. It felt deliberate. The bobcat's breathing grew more erratic for a moment, then settled as it pressed its head weakly against Lauren's sleeve. A gesture of trust so gentle that Evan's eyes widened. The animal trembled again, a small, fragile sound catching in its throat, soft, rhythmic, almost like a mother calling for a lost kit. "That sound," Lauren whispered. "She keeps doing it." Evan listened, his expression tightening. "I've only heard bobcats make that call when they're separated from a kitten. But she's alone. There's no sign of any young." Lauren's chest tightened. She couldn't shake the overwhelming sense that this animal hadn't come here simply to survive. She came here for something more, something she couldn't express except through her battered body and those haunting, pleading sounds. Carefully, Lauren resumed her examination, now with a deeper urgency. As she palpated the abdomen again, the bobcat's muscles tensed, then relaxed under her touch, controlled, almost purposeful. "Lauren," Evan said quietly, leaning close, "I swear she's telling us something." Lauren didn't believe in human-animal mysticism, but she did believe in instinct. This bobcat's instincts were screaming something they had not yet understood. She felt again, slow, steady pressure across the stomach. And then, unmistakably, a faint push from within, a flutter of life responding to her touch. Her breath caught. There it is again. Evan stepped back, stunned. "Are you serious? You think—" Lauren whispered the word before he could finish. "Pregnant." The realization cast a heavy silence over the room. Pregnant. Injured. Alone. Seeking humans. Everything twisted together in a way that made her skin prickle. The bobcat released another quiet call, deeper this time, rolling through her chest as if yearning for something beyond this room. She shifted weakly, pressing her body against the table as though anchoring herself. "But something else is going on," Evan murmured, pointing to another mark just above the wound. A small puncture, bruised around the edges, circular, too precise to be natural. Lauren leaned closer. "That's not a bite. Or a claw. It's too clean." She followed the angle with her fingertip. The bobcat flinched but didn't pull away. Evan inhaled sharply. "It looks like she was hit with something. Maybe a tool, a blunt object? But why would a pregnant bobcat be attacked out there?" The question sat heavy between them. Lauren's thoughts churned. A wounded, pregnant bobcat should have hidden beneath brush, retreated to a den, avoided all human scent and sound. Yet this one had dragged herself through the fog to their doorstep. She couldn't have known what a clinic was. She couldn't have understood what humans did here, unless something beyond instinct had pushed her here. Something urgent, primal, desperate. Lauren brushed the bobcat's cheek with the back of her hand. "We're going to help you," she whispered. The animal's eyes half closed, as if in relief. But the relief was short-lived. The bobcat stiffened, her breathing suddenly sharp and uneven. Lauren stepped back, heart pounding. Something deep inside the animal shifted, a tremor that didn't feel right. Pain? Fear? Or something more alarming? "Evan, prep the ultrasound," Lauren said quickly, her voice tightening. "Whatever this is, we need to see inside. Now." Evan hurried toward the cabinet, wheels squeaking as he rolled out the machine. Lauren stayed with the bobcat, keeping gentle but steady pressure on its side as the tremors worsened. She whispered soft reassurances, feeling the animal's warm breath against her wrist, sensing its fight to hold on. A mother's fight, she thought. But for what? But for... The fog outside thickened against the glass, as if the world beyond the clinic were closing in around them. The bobcat's calls grew softer, more fragile, but still unmistakably maternal. Something deep inside that injured body was waiting, struggling to be heard, and as Evan powered on the ultrasound with trembling hands, Lauren felt a chill settle below her ribs. Whatever was happening inside this creature, the truth waiting beneath fur and bone was far more terrible and far more urgent than anything she had imagined. The hum of the machine filled the exam room, a low vibration that seemed to seep into the air as though the walls themselves were bracing for what was coming. The bobcat lay motionless except for the faint rise and fall of her chest. Her eyes, open only a sliver, flicked between Lauren's face and the blurry glow of the ultrasound monitor, as though she sensed that something important was about to be revealed. Lauren's own heartbeat thudded in her ears, the uncertainty pressing against her ribs like a physical weight. Before she could position the wand, a sharp knock rattled the clinic's glass front door. It jolted both her and Evan from their concentration. For a moment they froze, startled by the unexpected intrusion. Red Pine rarely saw visitors this early, especially on a fog-heavy morning like this. The bobcat stirred weakly at the sound, her ears twitching in distress. "I'll get it," Evan said softly. "Keep her steady." Lauren nodded, keeping one hand on the bobcat's flank. The animal's breathing remained shallow, every exhale edged with a faint tremor. Her paw made a faint scraping motion on the table, as if searching for something, someone, that wasn't there. From the front of the clinic came the squeak of hinges and a hurried exchange of voices. Low, urgent, not the tone of someone needing routine pet care. A moment later, Evan returned with a man trailing close behind him, broad-shouldered, weathered, wearing an old ranch coat still dusted with frost. Roy Maddox. Lauren straightened, surprised to see him at this hour. "Roy, what's wrong?" Roy pulled off his hat, his weather-beaten face drawn tight with worry. "Heard you had trouble here this morning," he said, glancing toward the exam table. His gaze lingered on the bobcat, softening with unexpected sympathy. "I figured I'd better come over." Lauren frowned. "Trouble? Who told you?" "Fog carries sound in strange ways," he said, avoiding the question. "And when it lifted a bit near my place, I noticed something that didn't sit right." Lauren didn't miss the way his shoulders tensed. "What did you see?" Roy stepped closer, brow furrowed as he studied the bobcat's injuries. "Last night," he said finally, "I heard a shot. Loud enough to spook the horses. Then I saw a figure, someone running along the tree line on the ridge above my pasture." The words tightened the air in the room. Evan looked sharply toward Lauren. "A shooter?" Roy nodded. "Didn't look like any hunter I knew. Too jumpy. And moving fast. Like he didn't want anyone seeing where he came from." Lauren swallowed hard. "You think someone shot her?" Roy exhaled, the sound heavy. "I think whoever was out there wasn't looking for deer. And whatever they hit, it crawled away hurt. Found a trail of blood crossing the fence line this morning. Led toward town." His gaze dropped to the bobcat again. "Didn't expect to find this waiting for you and on your doorstep." The bobcat's ear twitched as if recognizing she was the subject of their conversation. She lifted her head slightly, emitting a low, broken sound, half whimper, half growl, torn between fear and exhaustion. Roy softened his voice, kneeling beside the table. "Easy now, girl. You're safe here." The tenderness surprised Lauren. Though she knew Roy had spent his life on the land and held a deep respect for its creatures, still, something in his voice carried more than sympathy. It carried guilt, or grief. "You said you saw a figure," Lauren pressed gently. "Did you recognize them?" Roy hesitated. Too far, too dark, but something didn't fit. Whoever it was didn't move like someone out hunting, more like someone running from something. The bobcat shuddered, a tremor rolling up her flank, and Lauren instinctively placed her palm against her side to steady her. She felt again that faint, fluttering movement deep within, a spark of life that didn't belong to fear or pain. "Roy," Lauren said slowly, "I think she's pregnant." Roy's eyes widened, his jaw tightening. "Lord," he whispered. Then last night wasn't just an attack. She was trying to protect something. Lauren felt the weight of those words stretch across the room like a shadow. Protect something, or someone. The bobcat's earlier cries echoed in her mind, soft, rhythmic, maternal. Evan returned to the ultrasound machine, clearing his throat. "We need to finish this," he said. "If she's hurt this badly and carrying young, we need to know exactly what's going on inside." Roy stepped back, giving them space, but he didn't leave. His gaze stayed fixed on the bobcat, his usually steady hands flexing with unease. Lauren positioned the wand on the bobcat's abdomen. The screen flickered to life with shifting shades of gray. She moved slowly, carefully, adjusting the angle while the bobcat let out a thin, breathy cry that cut straight through Lauren's composure. "It's okay," she murmured. "I know, just a little more." The fog outside pressed against the windows, a ghostly presence leaning in as if watching with them. The machine hummed louder, the image sharpened, and there, blurred but unmistakable, was the silhouette of life. A small body curled deep within the mother's womb. Roy inhaled sharply. Evan's hand froze midway to reaching for a towel. Lauren felt her throat tighten. It was there. A kitten. Fragile. Still moving. But as the shape shifted, something else caught her eye. Something harder. Brighter. Wrong. A small metallic glint. A foreign shape lodged dangerously close to the developing kitten. "What in the world?" Roy whispered, stepping closer. Lauren's breath shook. She leaned in, adjusting the focus. There was no mistake. It was metal, embedded, unnatural, and impossibly, terrifyingly, close to the unborn life inside. The bobcat whimpered again, a trembling, heartbroken sound that filled the room with a grief none of them fully understood yet. And as Lauren stared at the shining fragment inside the scan, a cold dread rose up her spine. Whatever struck this animal, it wasn't meant for survival. And whatever it carried inside wasn't just a wound. It was a warning. And the truth Roy had brought through the door had only deepened the mystery that now lay before them. Lauren slowly lowered the ultrasound wand. Her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and fear. The metallic object inside the bobcat glimmered faintly on the screen like a cruel secret hiding in the shadows. Evan stood frozen beside her, his hand gripping the edge of the table. Roy, usually steady as a stone, looked pale beneath the fluorescent lights. The fog outside pressed against the windows like a restless ocean, muffling the world to a hush, as though urging them to listen more closely. The bobcat shifted weakly, a tremor whispering through her battered body. Her eyes opened wider this time, not with feral instinct or pain, but with a heavy, pleading softness that struck Lauren deeper than any words could. It was an expression she had only ever seen in creatures who had reached the end of their strength, yet still begged the world for one more chance. The bobcat lifted her head just enough that it brushed Lauren's sleeve, a tender, fragile motion. She let it rest there, her own breath unsteady. Lauren. Evan's voice cracked lightly, forced through a tight throat. She's looking at you like she understands what we saw. Lauren couldn't find the words to answer. All she could do was meet the bobcat's gaze, those golden eyes dulled by pain but burning with something deeper, something like trust, something like hope. The animal drew in another breath, her chest shuddering, and made a low, broken sound that vibrated across the exam table, a soft call, a mother's call. The realization pressed harder into Lauren's ribs. This was not an ordinary patient. This was a mother fighting with everything she had left. "We need to stabilize her," Lauren finally said, though her voice shook. "She's losing strength fast." Evan hurried to gather fluids and warm blankets. Roy stepped aside but didn't leave. He looked as if the bobcat's suffering had carved a wound into his own chest. As Lauren reached to adjust the bobcat's position, the animal flinched. Not from fear, but from the pain radiating through her abdomen. She curled instinctively around her belly, weak paws drawing inward as though trying to shield what little life remained inside her. "Easy," Lauren murmured. "You're safe here." The bobcat blinked slowly. Her pupils widened, not in aggression, but with a soft, glassy sheen that made Lauren's breath tremble. She had looked into the eyes of countless injured animals in her career, but never had she seen a gaze so human in its desperation, so aware of its own fragility. Roy stepped closer, hat in hand. "I've seen a lot of things out in those woods," he said quietly, "but I've never seen a wild cat look at a person the way she's looking at you now." Lauren swallowed thickly. She's asking for help. She knows she needs it. The bobcat gave another soft, rhythmic sound. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a warning. It was a whisper, a plea. Lauren leaned closer, resting a gentle palm over the animal's shoulder. The fur beneath her hand trembled with each breath, and as she held her there, a faint push came from within the bobcat's abdomen again. A small, undeniable movement. "She's still trying to protect her young," Lauren murmured. "Even now, even with all this pain." Roy exhaled deeply, guilt flickering across his face. Whatever happened up on that ridge last night, she must have fought like hell to get away. Evan finished setting up the IV, his hands steady despite the worry etched into his expression. "If she's this weak," he said, "we're running out of time. We need to prepare for possible surgery." Lauren nodded, but before she could say more, the bobcat pressed her head more firmly into her arm. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't wild. It was a gesture Lauren recognized from countless pets she had treated. A gesture of surrender and trust. But seeing it from a wild bobcat stole the air from her lungs. "She's telling you she's ready," Evan whispered. Lauren felt her heart ache. "Or she's telling me she can't do this alone." For a long moment, the exam room fell completely silent, except for the bobcat's raspy breaths. Lauren could hear the faint hum of the ultrasound machine cooling down, the tick of the wall clock, and the soft shuffle of Roy's boots on the tile. But all her focus stayed locked on the bobcat's eyes. The animal lifted her head a little higher, an impossible effort from a body so close to collapse. Her gaze fastened onto Lauren's face with an intensity that felt almost supernatural. Not wild, not ferocious, begging. The sound that followed was soft, nearly inaudible, but it carried the weight of something ancient and universal, a mother pleading for her child's life. Lauren felt tears sting her eyes. She brushed her fingers lightly against the bobcat's cheek, and the animal leaned into the touch as though clinging to the last warmth she could find. She's asking us to save her baby, Lauren whispered. Roy drew a shaky breath. If someone shot her, and she still made it all the way here, she must have walked through hell to get to your door. Lauren nodded, unable to speak. The bobcat's paw twitched, a feeble but deliberate motion toward her abdomen, as if trying to guide them to the truth. The gesture hit Lauren like a blow. This wasn't just instinct. This was intention. Evan glanced toward the surgical room. "Tell me what you need," he said, determination overtaking hesitation. "I'll get everything ready." But Lauren didn't move. Not yet. She kept her hand on the bobcat's cheek, feeling the fragile strength flickering beneath her touch. The animal's eyes fluttered half shut again, but she fought to keep them open. She was holding on, for her unborn kitten, for whatever hope she believed these humans could offer. "We'll help you," Lauren finally whispered. "I promise." The bobcat relaxed into the table, her breathing slow but trusting. Lauren lifted her hand only when she felt the tremors ease. She turned to Evan, resolve settling into her bones. "We're going to save her," she said. "Both of them." The clinic lights reflected off the ultrasound screen, where the faint glimmer of metal still hovered dangerously close to the tiny heartbeat within. Whatever this mother had survived was only the beginning, and whatever waited for them next would demand more courage, more skill, more compassion than any of them had ever been asked to give before. The realization sat heavy in the air as Lauren adjusted the bobcat's IV line. The animal's breaths faltered in shallow waves, her strength slipping away like water through fingers. Lauren's mind raced through the steps ahead: stabilization, sedation, imaging, potential surgery, and each one felt more urgent than the last. But the path wasn't clear yet, and the danger of acting too soon weighed just as heavily as the danger of waiting. She wiped her palms on her scrubs, her heartbeat slowing only when the bobcat's trembling eased beneath her hand. Behind her, the soft creak of boot leather signaled Roy stepping back, giving her space. Evan, on the other hand, didn't move. He stood stiffly at the edge of the table, arms crossed tight against his chest, a deep furrow cutting through his brow. "Lauren," he said quietly, "we need to talk before we go any further." She didn't look up at first. "About what?" "You know what." His voice carried the kind of patience that only barely hid frustration. "You're thinking about sedating her for a more detailed scan, maybe even prepping for surgery." He exhaled a long, tense breath. "But she's too weak. We could lose her if we push too hard." Roy shifted his weight, watching the exchange intently. Lauren finally straightened, turning to face Evan. "And we could lose both lives if we delay. If that metal fragment shifts even half a centimeter, we won't have a chance at all." Evan ran a hand over his jaw, his eyes flicking toward the bobcat's still form. "She made it through the forest like this, Lauren. She survived the night. We can give her a few more hours to stabilize. Fluids, warmth, rest, oxygen support. Everything we'd do for any patient in her condition." "But she isn't any patient," Lauren countered. "She's pregnant, and the wound is too close to the kitten. The ultrasound already showed instability around the site. Waiting might be the worst thing we could do." He shook his head slowly. "We don't know that for sure." Lauren felt her patience waver, though she fought to keep her voice steady. "And we don't know that waiting is safe. Every minute counts, Evan." Roy lifted a hand gently, trying to ease the tension. "Lauren, he's just saying we should be careful." "Careful?" Lauren's voice softened, but it carried an unmistakable edge. "Careful doesn't mean passive. That metal inside her, it didn't land by accident. and whatever hit her wasn't meant to let her walk away. She gestured toward the ultrasound machine. We saw exactly how close it is. If she didn't come here, she might already be gone. Evan opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, the bobcat let out a trembling cry, soft, raw, and full of the same maternal ache that had haunted every sound she'd made since arriving. It pulled their attention instantly. Her injured flank rose and fell in shallow motions. Her paws twitched weakly as though reaching for something she couldn't hold. Lauren stepped close again, resting a steadying hand on the animal's shoulder. She's not stable enough for time. This is urgent. Evan rubbed the back of his neck. I get that, but rushing could kill her, and if she dies on that table, we lose the baby automatically. His tone softened, empathy overtaking resistance. Lauren, sometimes the safest thing we can do is pause. Lauren took a breath, letting the truth of his words settle. He wasn't wrong, but neither was she. And caught between the two was a life no bigger than her palm, and a mother whose every breath cried out for help. But then the bobcat did something none of them expected. She lifted her head, barely, painfully, and nudged Lauren's wrist with her nose, not aggressively, not in fear, with intention. A push that lingered before her strength faded again. Her eyes locked on Lauren's, the gold in them dimmed but determined. Evan's breath caught. Did she just? Roy whispered. She's asking you to take the risk. Lauren felt the air leave her lungs. She doesn't know what she's asking, she murmured. But in her heart she wasn't sure that was true. The bobcat lowered her head back to the table, a soft whimper escaping her throat. She curled slightly around her abdomen again, as if cradling the life inside her. It was instinct. It was love. It was trust. And it shattered every remaining doubt in Lauren's chest. We're doing the scan, she said firmly. A full one. And if we need to operate, we operate. Evan closed his eyes briefly, exhaling a resigned breath. All right, he said softly. But if her vitals crash, we stop immediately. No compromises. Lauren nodded. Agreed. Roy placed a hand on the back of a nearby chair, his voice somber. If that shooter's still out there, you folks need to know what he used. That metal inside her might tell us something. Lauren moved toward the preparation counter. We'll find out soon enough. She looked at Evan. Let's prep her for mild sedation, the lightest dose possible, enough to ease her pain and get a clear image. Evan hesitated only a moment more before nodding. I'll start. As he gathered the medications and monitors, Lauren returned to the bobcat's side. The animal's breathing steadied slightly under her touch. The fog outside began to lift, casting pale morning light across the exam room floor. You're not alone, Lauren whispered. We're right here. The bobcat's ear twitched. A sign she heard. A sign she believed. Roy stood near the doorway, hat pressed to his chest, his voice low with something that sounded almost like prayer. You're fightin', Buck girl. Keep fightin'. The clinic, for a moment, felt like the center of a universe held together solely by hope. Fragile, trembling, but alive. The clinic, for a moment, felt like the center of a universe held together solely by hope. Fragile, trembling, but alive. And as Evan prepared the syringe and Lauren steadied herself for whatever truth the next scan would reveal, the bobcat closed her eyes, trusting them completely with everything she had left. Lauren drew in a slow breath, her chest tight with the weight of responsibility. Just the smallest dose, she reminded softly, her hand resting on the bobcat's shoulder. The animal's body tensed for a heartbeat, then relaxed beneath her touch as though surrendering to the gentle calm of her voice. Evan nodded and administered the medication with steady hands. The bobcat's breaths eased into slower, deeper waves, still fragile, but no longer fighting against pain with every inhale. The lights in the exam room hummed faintly as Lauren turned on the main monitor. The ultrasound machine flickered, its glow cutting a soft arc across the bobcat's fur. Outside, the fog had thinned to a pale haze, the morning sun trying its best to pierce through. In the shifting light, the bobcat's spotted coat seemed almost silver. Roy stepped closer, hat in hand, his voice a low murmur. If anything you're about to see helps explain what happened out there, then it's worth whatever it takes. His tone held a heaviness, as though he feared the truth as much as he needed it. Lauren touched the wand to the warm gel she'd spread across the bobcat's abdomen. The animal didn't flinch. Instead, she let out a faint, trembling sound. Soft, nearly melodic, the same fragile call she'd made before. A mother's call, a pleading song. "It's all right," Lauren whispered. "We'll take good care of you." She pressed the ultrasound probe gently against the bobcat's belly, and the screen bloomed with shifting shadows and shapes. Evan moved to her side, eyes fixed on the monitor. Roy stepped closer but remained respectfully behind them, arms crossed, jaw set. The image sharpened slowly, curving bones, faint outlines, the rhythm of movement deep within. And then there it was, unmistakable, a tiny body curled tight, its shape trembling with a heartbeat so small it flickered like a candle flame. "Oh my," Evan whispered, breathless. "There's the kitten. She's still hanging on." Lauren felt warmth bloom in her chest at the sight. The kitten was small, far too small, but alive, moving, fighting, just like its mother. But the relief lasted only a moment before something darker intruded on the image. A sharp-edged glint, a hard, foreign outline. "There," Lauren whispered, adjusting the angle. "There it is." Roy leaned in, squinting. "What am I looking at, exactly?" The metallic object lodged near the kitten's position appeared crystal clear now, shining bright under the ultrasound's view. Small, oval, dense, surrounded by tissue that looked angry, inflamed, and stressed. "It's metal," Evan said quietly. "It's gotta be." Lauren moved the probe again, slowly, carefully. The image shifted, bringing the object into even clearer view, and that was when the room fell silent. A single bullet fragment, jagged at the tip, glowed starkly against the delicate form of the unborn kitten. A fragment small enough to be overlooked in a quick injury assessment, but deadly enough to threaten both lives if it shifted even the slightest inch. Roy's face blanched. Someone shot her, a pregnant bobcat. He shook his head slowly, disbelief and anger rising together. Who in their right mind would do a thing like that? Lauren swallowed hard. Not someone hunting. This is too close range, too direct. And she wasn't hit in a fight or by accident. She traced the shape with her gaze, her voice dropping lower. This was aimed at her. The bobcat's paw twitched against the table, a small, helpless motion. She wasn't fully asleep, just resting in that thin space between pain and sedation, her mind still clinging to awareness. Her breathing hitched when Lauren moved the probe a little deeper across her abdomen, as though she knew exactly what they were seeing. She's been carrying this fragment for hours, Lauren murmured. Maybe since last night. And she walked through the woods, down the ridge, bleeding, all the way here. Her voice trembled, all to save her baby. The monitor beeped softly as the bobcat's vitals shifted. Evan glanced at her heart rate. Still stable for now, but we can't move her too fast. Lauren nodded, though her mind was already racing. We'll need a surgical plan. The fragment is too close to her uterine wall. If it migrates... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Roy exhaled through his teeth. This wasn't some random attack. Someone did this on purpose. Lauren adjusted the probe again. Another angle revealed bruising along the bobcat's side. Evidence of a struggle, not just a single strike. She fought back, Lauren said quietly. She must have, and she still managed to get away. Evan moved around the table, checking the bobcat's oxygen flow. I don't know how she's still alive. Because she had a reason, Roy murmured. Animals like her don't quit when they've got something to protect. The bobcat's ear twitched, as though responding. The tiny heartbeat on the screen flickered again, steady but fragile. Lauren felt emotion tighten her throat. This wasn't just survival. It was devotion. It was instinct sharpened into something fierce and unyielding. A mother refusing to give up. Lauren set the probe aside, wiping the gel from the bobcat's abdomen with a warm cloth. The animal leaned faintly into the touch, exhausted but still holding on. We'll have to operate, Lauren said finally, turning to face both Evan and Roy. And we'll have to do it soon. The fragment is lodged too deep, too close. If she goes into labor early, or if her vitals crash, Roy finished for her, voice low, you'll lose both. Lauren nodded. The room grew quiet again, but not with fear this time. With resolve, with the shared understanding that the choice had already been made, not by them, but by the bobcat who had dragged herself to their door. As Lauren prepared the surgical notes and Evan gathered supplies, the bobcat let out a soft, trembling breath. Her eyes opened halfway, meeting Lauren's gaze with a look so full of trust, it made her chest ache. Hang on, Lauren whispered. We're going to get you through this. Both of you. Outside, the fog finally began to lift, revealing the world in sharp relief. Inside the clinic, the truth had been exposed, one that carried danger, sorrow, and a desperate call for justice. But it had also revealed something else, a heartbeat worth fighting for. And now the real battle was about to begin. Lauren pushed open the door to the surgical prep room with her shoulder, her hands full of sterile packs and monitoring cables. The bright overhead lights hummed steadily, illuminating the stainless steel counters and the neatly arranged trays of instruments. Everything looked cold and sharp, but in this moment, the room felt like the only place where hope still had a chance to survive. Evan followed close behind her, carrying the portable oxygen unit and a stack of warm blankets. The weight in the air was unmistakable, something between dread and determination. In the exam room, the bobcat lay motionless, sedated but not deeply, just enough to keep her still and comfortable. Her breaths were shallow but steady. The faint rise and fall of her chest echoed the rhythm of a life that refused to let go. When Lauren stepped back to her side, the animal's ear twitched softly, as if sensing her return. "We're here," Lauren whispered, her hand brushing gently across the bobcat's cheek. "We're going to help you. Just hold on." Roy stood near the counter, his hat set aside for the first time since he arrived. He looked older than he had an hour ago. The lines on his face deepened not by age, but by witnessing something he couldn't quite name. He nodded as Lauren approached. "You tell me what you need. I'll do anything I can." Lauren offered him a small, grateful smile. "Just stay close in case we need an extra set of hands." Evan set the oxygen mask near the bobcat's muzzle and adjusted the flow. "Her vitals have leveled for now," he said, glancing at the monitors. "We're in the window, Lauren. If you're sure about this—" "I'm sure," she replied, her voice firm though her stomach churned with nerves. "We don't have time to wait. That fragment has already shifted once. If it shifts again—" She let the sentence fade. The possibility was too awful to voice. Evan swallowed and nodded. "Then we start now." Lauren began by cleaning the bobcat's abdomen with antiseptic, the soft circular motions revealing the rise of old scars and the mottled bruises left behind from the attack. The sight made her chest tighten. "She's been through so much," she murmured. "She survived things that should have ended her long before she reached us." "That's what mothers do," Roy said softly from behind her. "They walk through fire if that's what it takes." Lauren paused, letting those words steady her heart. She looked down at the bobcat, at the gentle pattern of her fur, the way her body curled just slightly, as if still trying to shield the life deep within. "Then we'll meet her halfway." She reached for the sedative booster, just enough to keep the bobcat calm during the procedure. The animal's muscles eased beneath her fingertips, her breaths settling into a slower, rhythmic pattern. Evan clipped the EKG wires into place, watching the monitor as the green lines danced in steady waves. "All right," Lauren said, exhaling. "Scalpel." Evan placed the instrument in her hand. The metal felt cool, almost too light for the gravity of what it represented. She positioned it carefully, her eyes narrowing with focus. The whole room seemed to hold its breath with her. With slow, precise pressure, Lauren made the first incision. A thin line of red appeared, a stark reminder of the fragile balance between injury and healing, between life and the loss that hovered so close. She worked carefully, layer by layer, each move guided by years of training and an instinct she couldn't explain. Evan dabbed away the fluids that pooled along the edges, his movements calm but deliberate. "She's holding steady," he murmured. "Heart rate's good. Oxygen's good." "Thank you," Lauren said softly, her eyes never leaving the surgical site. It wasn't long before she reached the deeper tissue where the inflammation had been visible on the ultrasound. The bruising was even worse here. Dark, angry, swollen. She paused just long enough to reposition her tools. "That's where it should be," she said. "Get the extractor ready." Evan opened the tray with a metallic click. Roy stepped closer, watching with anxious eyes, but trusting every decision unfolding before him. Lauren began the careful work of navigating around the inflamed area, her hands steady even as her pulse raced. The bobcat let out a faint, unconscious whimper. Lauren froze for a moment, letting the sound settle, then resumed with even greater care. "It's okay," she whispered. "We're right here." And then she saw it. A glint of metal, buried deep within the tissue, its jagged edge glimmering beneath the bright surgical lights. The bullet fragment. Smaller than she expected, but sharp and vicious looking, like a shard of a broken blade. "I see it," she said quietly. "It's right there." Roy stepped closer, his breath hitching. "Lord have mercy." Lauren positioned the extractors around the fragment, adjusting the angle until the grip was secure. Evan steadied the tissue around the site. The moment stretched long and taut, every second ticking louder in her mind. "On 3, Lauren whispered. 1, 2. On the silent count of 3, she pulled. The fragment slid free with a sickening ease, leaving behind a wound that wept softly, but released the pressure that had been threatening 2 lives at once. Lauren held the fragment up to the light, its jagged edge gleaming with a cruel familiarity. Evan exhaled shakily. She's still stable, heart rate steady. Roy's shoulders sagged with relief. You did it. But Lauren didn't smile. She set the fragment aside carefully, her eyes on the bobcat's abdomen. We're not done yet. We need to make sure there's no secondary damage. She worked quickly, checking for bleeding, repairing tissue, and ensuring the kitten's protective environment remained intact. And with every careful stitch, the bobcat seemed to relax a little more, as though she felt the burden lifting from her body. When the final suture was in place, Lauren stepped back, breath trembling. She made it through the hardest part. Evan looked at the monitors again. Her heart rate is strong, better than before. She's fighting. Roy let out a long breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. She's a tough one, tougher than most folks I know. Lauren removed her gloves, her gaze softening as she looked at the bobcat resting peacefully on the table. She fought her way to us, she said. All we did was follow her lead. The surgery was finished. The fragment was out. Both mother and unborn kitten had made it through the impossible. But even as relief washed over the room, Lauren's mind circled back to the same chilling truth. Someone had caused this, and someone was still out there. As they wheeled the bobcat into recovery, the dawn outside brightened just a little more, gentle, warm, and full of hope. But the shadow behind the attack remained, waiting somewhere beyond the trees. And their part in this story was far from over. The surgical lights dimmed as Lauren and Evan finished cleaning the last of the instruments. They exchanged a long, weary look, the kind that only 2 people who had just wrestled with life and death could understand. The bobcat now rested in the recovery area, draped in warm blankets, a gentle rhythm rising and falling beneath her bandaged abdomen. The danger was far from gone, but the first battle had been won. Lauren leaned her palms against the counter, letting herself take one full breath. Just one. But the moment her lungs filled, the monitors in the recovery room chirped softly. Not an alarm, but a subtle shift. A change in pattern. A tremor of movement that made Evan look up instantly. You hear that? He asked. Lauren's heart jumped. She didn't wait. She pushed through the swinging door into the recovery area and hurried to the bobcat's side. The mother's breathing had grown irregular, not weaker, but strained, as though her body was fighting to shift from one struggle to another. Her paws twitched, her tail curled. Her ribs trembled under the soft rise of sedation. She's going into distress, Lauren said, voice tight. Evan was already beside her, checking vitals. Her oxygen is stable, heart rate is up but not crashing. This isn't a collapse. It almost looks like a soft, high sound interrupted him. Lauren froze. The sound was faint, no louder than a whisper caught in the wind, but it was unmistakable. A tiny, fragile cry coming from somewhere close, somewhere impossibly close. She stared at the bobcat's abdomen, her chest tightening with a mixture of awe and fear. No, she breathed. She can't be. She's early, too early. But nature had made its decision. Another small cry echoed through the room, weak, trembling, but alive. Oh, my Lord, Roy whispered from the doorway, hat pressed to his chest. He stepped in slowly, his boots barely making a sound on the tile. Is that? Lauren didn't answer. She didn't dare waste a second. "She's in premature labor," she said. "We need to assist. Now." Evan rushed to gather towels, warming pads, suction bulbs, anything he could reach. His movements were quick, efficient, practiced. But even he looked shaken. This wasn't routine. This wasn't expected. This was a fight nature had thrust upon them without warning. Lauren slid her hands gently along the bobcat's abdomen. "Easy, sweetheart. We're right here." The animal's body tightened around her touch, her muscles contracting in waves of effort. Her breathing came in soft growls, pained, trembling, but determined. Within moments, the first tiny shape appeared, wet, fragile, impossibly small. "It's the kitten," Lauren said, her voice trembling. "She's delivering." Evan handed her a warm towel. Lauren's hands remained steady even as her heart raced. She cradled the newborn gently, supporting its head, clearing its airway with a small bulb, then rubbing its tiny chest in slow circles the way she had done countless times with domestic animals. "Come on," she whispered. "Breathe for me. Just breathe." The newborn remained still for a terrifying second. Then a flutter, a quiver, a breath. A thin, wavering cry broke from its tiny body, a sound more powerful than any roar. A miracle. Roy's eyes filled with tears he didn't bother to hide. That little thing, she kept it alive through all that pain? Lauren nodded, barely able to speak. She walked through the woods with a bullet in her side. While carrying this baby, she placed the newborn on the heating pad, wrapping it in the warmed towel and tucking it close to its mother's face. The bobcat, weak but conscious enough to sense the presence, shifted her muzzle and nudged the small bundle with a soft, trembling breath. The newborn answered with a faint cry. The sound broke something open in the room, silence giving way to relief, to awe, to something sacred that none of them could name but all of them felt. Evan wiped his eyes with the back of his arm, pretending it was just sweat. Roy didn't pretend at all. Lauren whispered, barely audible, "She's still fighting. She's not giving up." The bobcat tried to lift her head again, too weak to fully manage it, but strong enough to show the instinct burning inside her. A mother's need, a promise her body refused to break. But Lauren noticed something else, something that tightened her chest. The bobcat's breathing had grown even more strained. The labor, combined with surgery, had pushed her to the edge. Her eyes fluttered as though she were drifting somewhere far away. "Evan," Lauren said, alarm threading her voice. "We need to support her vitals. She's losing strength fast." He moved quickly to adjust the fluids and reposition the oxygen mask. "She's not crashing, but the stress is too much. We need to stabilize her before she fades." Lauren stroked the bobcat's cheek gently. "Stay with us. Your baby needs you." The kitten cried again, so small, so thin, but alive. And that was enough. Enough to pull Lauren through her fear. Enough to give Evan renewed urgency. Enough to make Roy mutter a soft prayer under his breath. "We'll save her," Lauren said, determination hardening into resolve. "We'll save both of them. I don't care how long it takes." As the kitten curled deeper into the towel, its tiny chest rising and falling in faint but steady breaths, the bobcat pressed her muzzle against it one more time, gathering what little strength she had to acknowledge the life she'd fought to protect. In that moment, the world felt impossibly small. Just a mother, her newborn, and the people who had witnessed the miracle of their survival. But danger didn't disappear just because hope arrived. Outside, the forest waited in uneasy silence. And somewhere beyond the trees, the one who had fired that shot was still out there, watching, hiding, perhaps knowing exactly what he had left behind. But for now, for this fleeting sliver of time, new life had triumphed. A cry had broken through the darkness, and in the gentle light of the recovery room, a mother and her fragile newborn breathed together for the very first time. The room had fallen into a hush so profound that even the soft hum of the oxygen machine felt sacred. Lauren stood beside the recovery table, watching the newborn bobcat nestled in its warm towel. Its tiny chest fluttered with fragile breaths, each one a promise wrestled from the edge of extinction. The mother's head rested weakly on the blanket, her muzzle gently pressed against the bundle that carried her legacy. Though her eyes were only half open, they glimmered with a quiet awareness, a recognition only a mother could hold. Lauren felt the emotion rise in her throat. She had seen countless births, countless rescues, countless moments where life clung to the thinnest of threads, but nothing had prepared her for this. Nothing had prepared her for a wild animal who had dragged herself through the cold, through blood loss, through terror, simply to place her unborn child into human hands. "We did it," Evan whispered, his voice thick with disbelief. "They're both still with us." Lauren nodded slowly. "For now, but she's not out of danger yet." The bobcat's breathing was still ragged, her strength nowhere near restored after surgery and labor. She lay almost motionless, her body curled protectively around the newborn even though her muscles trembled with exhaustion. Lauren studied her carefully, brushing a strand of fur from her face. The animal's eyes flickered open at the touch, and a soft rumble vibrated faintly in her throat. Not a growl, but something gentler, the quiet echo of a mother reassuring her young. "She knows," Lauren murmured. "She knows her baby is alive." Roy, who had been standing silently near the doorway, stepped closer, his weathered features softened by something like reverence. "I never thought I'd see the day," he said. "A wild cat. Trusting people this much. It's something else." Lauren managed a small smile. Trust isn't something she gave freely. She earned it. And so did we. The kitten let out another tiny cry, thin, reedy, determined. Its small paw reached outward, bumping against its mother's cheek. The mother responded with the faintest nuzzle, a slow movement that looked like it took every ounce of strength she had left. Evan placed a gentle hand on Lauren's shoulder. "We need to keep her warm, keep her hydrated, and keep monitoring her vitals. If she slips into shock—" "I know," Lauren whispered, "but look at her. She's trying." The bobcat shifted slightly, her paw moving forward in a delicate, trembling attempt to pull the kitten closer. Her claws didn't unsheathe. Her movements weren't wild. She wasn't acting on instinct alone. She was acting on love, fierce, wounded, and unbroken. "Let me help you," Lauren said softly, sliding the towel-wrapped kitten gently against its mother's body. The mother exhaled, a shuddering breath of relief, and rested her chin over the newborn like a shield. Roy wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "That little one's got a fight in her, just like her mama." Lauren nodded. "She comes from strength." But then her expression changed. Concern tightened her features as she checked the mother's vitals again. The numbers were fluctuating, dropping, rising, dropping again. Not dangerously yet, but enough to stir unease in her chest. "She's pushing herself too hard," Lauren said. "Her body's still recovering from surgery, and the birth drained whatever strength she had left." "We can support her," Evan said softly. "She made it this far." Lauren brushed her fingers gently along the bobcat's side. "I'm not worried about her will," she murmured. "I'm worried about what her body can endure." The bobcat stirred, sensing their voices. She lifted her head, a tremulous effort, and nudged the kitten again before lowering her muzzle back to the blanket. The gesture was subtle but spoke louder than words. She wasn't giving up. Lauren felt something deep inside her settle, a resolve that rooted itself firmly. "We'll help her stay strong. We owe her that much." Minutes passed in silence except for the soft breaths of mother and child. The dim morning light grew brighter against the windows, warming the room with a soft glow. The world outside felt distant, irrelevant compared to the fragile miracle unfolding before them. But the peace didn't last. The newborn let out a small, shaky sound, a whimper, thin as thread. Lauren bent closer, checking its breathing. It was steady, but not robust. The kitten was still dangerously premature. Every breath it took required courage its tiny body barely possessed. "We need to feed her soon," Lauren said quietly. "But not until she's a little more stable." "The mother," Evan hesitated. "Will she be able to nurse her?" Lauren looked at the bobcat's frail form. "Eventually, maybe. But right now, she's too weak. We'll have to tube feed the kitten for a while." Roy frowned. "She'll let you do that? Won't she see it as interfering?" "No," Lauren said softly. "Not with this one. She came to us for help. She knows we're part of her fight." The bobcat opened her eyes again at the sound of Lauren's voice. For a moment, their gazes locked, and Lauren felt something pass between them. Not language, not instinct. Recognition. "You're safe," Lauren whispered, her voice steadying. "Your baby's safe. Rest now." The bobcat's eyelids lowered slowly, her breathing evening out as she drifted into a deeper sleep. Her chin remained touching the tiny kitten, as though guarding it even in dreams. Evan adjusted the heat lamp above them. "They're stable," he said, "for the moment." Lauren nodded, but her mind wasn't entirely at ease. Stability was fragile. It could vanish in an instant. And somewhere outside these walls was the unanswered question. What had truly happened in those woods, and why? But right now, she chose to focus on what lay in front of her. A mother who had survived the impossible. A newborn who had defied every odd. A bond strong enough to bridge the wild and the human world. And in this small, quiet room, two lives had found refuge in each other. Roy stepped forward and whispered, "This right here. This is God's work." Lauren placed a warm hand on the bobcat's back. "No," she said softly. "This is a mother's work." The kitten stirred again, letting out a faint, hopeful squeak, and for the first time since this ordeal began, Lauren allowed herself to believe. They just might make it. The fragile peace of the recovery room lingered like a warm breath in winter. But it didn't last long. By mid-morning, the bobcat mother was resting in a deep, healing sleep, her newborn tucked against her side under a gentle heat lamp. The clinic felt calmer, quieter, almost serene. But beneath the surface, a lingering tension hummed like an old engine idling too long. As Lauren stepped out into the hallway to check on supply reports, she found Roy waiting there, leaning against the wall with his arms folded tightly across his chest. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the floor, jaw working like he was battling back something heavy. "You all right?" Lauren asked gently. Roy lifted his gaze, his eyes shadowed with something she couldn't quite read. "Reckon I'm not sure," he said. "I've been thinking all morning about what happened out there, about the shot, about who I saw running." Lauren took a breath. She'd been expecting this. "Tell me what's on your mind." Roy nodded once, slowly. "I need to go back out there, to the ridge. If there's something else out in those woods, a clue, a trail, anything that explains what happened to her, I want to find it before the weather or the animals wipe it away." Lauren hesitated. "Roy, you don't have to put yourself in danger." "It's not danger I'm worried about," he said quietly. "It's responsibility. That land's mine. It's my job to know what happens on it. And if someone used it to hurt that mama, then I need to face that truth." Lauren understood. The weight in his voice wasn't anger. It was guilt. It was fear that his land had become the backdrop to something cruel. Evan joined them in the hallway, wiping his hands on a towel. "If he's going back out there," he said, "he shouldn't go alone." Roy shook his head. "I'm used to those woods. You two stay here. That mama needs you more than I do." Lauren wasn't convinced, but she knew arguing wouldn't work. Roy wasn't reckless, but once he set his mind to something, nothing short of a blizzard could turn him around. "Be careful, Roy," she said, "and call us if you see anything at all." He tipped his hat. "You have my word." Minutes later, he was gone, his truck rumbling down the gravel road toward the tree line. Lauren watched through the window until the fog swallowed him, the forest closing behind him like a secret. The woods were quiet when Roy arrived. Too quiet. Snowmelt dripped from the branches, muffling the sound of his steps. He followed the same ridge he'd crossed the night before, retracing his movements carefully. The memory of the gunshot echoed in his mind. Sharp, sudden, close. He reached the old fence line and crouched low, scanning the ground. It didn't take long to find the first dark stain in the dirt. Dried blood. Not fresh, but not old enough to fade. His breath grew shallow as he followed the trail deeper into the woods. Then he found something else. A second patch of blood. Smaller, but different. "Two trails," Roy muttered. "Not one." He followed the first trail, clearly the bobcat mother's. The pattern of the prints told the story. Heavy steps, staggering, limping, desperate but determined. She had moved with instinct, not logic, toward town, toward help she shouldn't have known existed. But the second trail puzzled him. These were paw prints, too, bobcat-sized, tiny, too tiny. Roy knelt slowly, his weathered hands brushing the dirt. "Another one," he whispered. "A baby, or a youngster, but not the one born today." His pulse quickened. Had the mother been protecting another kitten out here? A juvenile? A kit old enough to walk, but small enough to be vulnerable? He stood, scanning the trees. "Where'd you go, little one?" Wind rustled through the branches like an answer he didn't want to hear. Roy followed the second trail, moving with the caution of a man who had spent his life reading the silent language of the forest. The tiny prints wove between the roots, circled an old stump, and then they vanished, cut off abruptly, like the small creature had been lifted or dragged. Roy's skin prickled under his coat. He crouched again, searching for any sign. That was when he saw it. A scrap of fabric caught on a thorn bush, almost invisible beneath the dusting of frost. He reached out and freed it, a piece of dark brown canvas, torn from a jacket. the same color he'd seen on the figure running along the ridge the night before. Roy's chest tightened. "Someone took that little one," he whispered. "Or scared it off. Or worse." But he didn't let the thought finish. Not yet. He tucked the fabric into his pocket, then stepped deeper into the woods, searching for any further sign. Every snap of a twig made him turn. Every shift of shadow made him brace. He wasn't a fearful man, but today the forest felt different, wrong in a way he couldn't name. He found one more clue before leaving. A boot print. Fresh, heavy, pressed deep into the mud beside a patch of disturbed leaves. A scuffle mark. A drag. Roy's heart ached. Someone had been out here. Someone who didn't belong. Someone who hadn't cared about the life they were tearing apart. "I'll get the truth," Roy promised the empty woods. "Even if I have to drag it out by hand." He turned back toward his truck just as the sun broke through the clouds, a brief golden light glinting off the frost. But the warmth did little to soothe the cold dread creeping into his bones. Back at the clinic, Lauren lifted her head the moment she heard the door chime. Roy stepped inside, his boots streaked with mud, his face set in a grim line. "What did you find?" she asked. Roy removed the torn fabric from his pocket and placed it in her hand. "That's from a man's coat," he said. "Matches what I saw last night. And that's not all. There were 2 blood trails. She wasn't alone out there." Lauren's breath caught. "Another kitten?" Roy nodded. Prints were small, real small, and then the trail stops like something picked it up. Silence settled heavy between them. The newborn bobcat in the recovery room let out a soft cry, as if sensing the shift in the room's air. Lauren swallowed hard. "If there's another baby out there, it might still be alive." Roy nodded. "Or someone has it." Evan looked between them, worry etched across his face. "So what do we do?" Lauren closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. "We focus on the mother and the newborn," she said. "We keep them safe. And when the time is right, we find out what really happened in those woods." Outside, the trees stood silent, watching. Inside, the truth deepened like a shadow, and now the mystery had only grown darker. Days passed at the Pine Ridge Veterinary Clinic in a careful, steady rhythm, one built around monitoring, feeding, and protecting the bobcat mother and her fragile newborn. The fear that had lingered in the room that first morning slowly changed shape, softening into guarded hope as the mother regained strength. Her breathing steadied, her eyes brightened, and with each passing hour, the steel of her spirit revealed itself again. Lauren spent long nights beside them, watching the mother press her nose into the kitten's fur, listening to the soft rumble of a protective purr. Evan rotated shifts, learning to read the bobcat's subtle signs, when she was tired, when she wanted space, when the kitten needed warming or feeding. Even Roy visited daily, bringing fresh bedding, checking the perimeter of the clinic, and silently promising the mother he would not let harm find her again. And slowly, the little family healed. After 2 weeks, the bobcat mother could stand without trembling. After 3, she could walk short distances inside the recovery pen. Her coat regained its gloss, hiding the scars beneath. The kitten, though still small, gained strength each day, stumbling on wobbly legs, chirping at its mother, batting clumsily at her tail. It was the 4th week when Lauren noticed the mother pacing, not anxiously, but with purpose. She sniffed the air often, paused near the windows, and watched the tree line with a distant, wild longing. "She's ready," Lauren whispered. Evan nodded, sadness and pride mixing in his expression. "She's looking for home." Roy stepped into the doorway, hat in hand. "If she's strong enough, we ought to let her go. A wild creature shouldn't be kept where she doesn't belong." Lauren hesitated only long enough to confirm what she already knew. "We'll release her tomorrow. Both of them." The decision filled the clinic with a bittersweet energy, preparation mixed with the quiet grief of letting go. They conducted one final checkup that evening. The mother tolerated their touch, but her eyes kept drifting toward the forest, glowing gold in the late sun. The kitten rested beside her, blinking with innocent trust. Lauren stroked the mother's cheek gently. "You've fought harder than any creature I've ever known," she whispered. "Tomorrow, you go home." The next morning dawned bright and cool. A soft breeze carried the scent of pine and thawing earth. The release site was a quiet clearing near the ridge, far from roads, deep enough into the woods for safety, but open enough for visibility. Evan and Roy set up a small perimeter, ensuring no hikers would wander through. Lauren transported the mother and kitten in a large recovery crate, the ride silent except for the gentle shifting of paws and the tiny chirps of the young bobcat. When they arrived, the forest felt alive with expectation. Sunlight filtered through the branches like golden ribbons. A distant woodpecker tapped at a tree. The natural world was ready to take its family back. Lauren opened the crate slowly. The mother stepped out first, not with the hesitation of a fearful animal, but with the confidence of one who had survived the unthinkable. She paused only once to look back over her shoulder, her amber eyes holding something Lauren would never forget. Understanding. The kitten tumbled out a moment later, stumbling through the grass before finding its mother's side. The mother nudged it gently, guiding it toward the cover of the underbrush. Roy wiped a hand across his face. "I'll be darned. She knew exactly what she was doing that night. Coming to your door. She trusted you to save her." Lauren swallowed past the tightness in her throat. "She saved herself. We just helped her finish the fight." The bobcat mother turned once more, meeting Lauren's gaze. The moment stretched, quiet, reverent. Wild gratitude shone in her eyes, delicate but unmistakable. Then, with a flick of her tail, she slipped into the trees. The kitten followed, its tiny form disappearing into the dappled shade. The forest swallowed them gently. Evan exhaled. "You think she'll make it?" Lauren nodded slowly. "She survived bullets, blood loss, childbirth, and every mile between the ridge and the clinic. She'll make it." Roy placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "You gave her a second chance. Both of them." But Lauren shook her head. "No. She earned it. We just honored it." As they packed up, the trees rustled softly, as though the forest itself was acknowledging the moment. A family had returned home. A mother's promise had been kept. And though danger still lingered somewhere between the shadows, today belonged to hope. Lauren looked once more toward the woods, imagining the mother guiding her kitten to a hidden den, teaching it the old rhythms of the wild. That image would stay with her for years. Some stories didn't need words. Some gratitude didn't need voices. Some victories were quiet, but they changed everything. And on that morning, watching the bobcat family disappear into the freedom they had reclaimed, Lauren felt, for the first time in weeks, peace. True, earned peace. She stood in the clearing long after the mother and her kitten had vanished, letting the sun warm her face, letting the quiet settle over her like a soft blanket. For so many days, her world had narrowed into the walls of the clinic. Bright lights, urgent voices, the scent of antiseptic, the thunder of worry beating in her chest. But now, here in the stillness of the forest, it felt as if nature itself had paused to acknowledge the miracle she had witnessed. Evan finished packing the last of the crates and locked the truck. "You ready to head back?" he asked. "In a minute," Lauren replied gently. She wasn't ready to let go of the moment just yet. A life had returned to the wild. A family had been reunited. And even though the mystery of the attack still loomed like a shadow at the tree line, this moment belonged to hope. Roy stood beside her, hands resting on his belt, gaze sweeping the woods. "You did a good thing, Doc," he said quietly. "Not many folks would have gone through all that trouble for a wild animal." Lauren smiled faintly. "She came to us. She trusted us. How could we do anything less?" Roy nodded. "Reckon you're right. Trust like that doesn't come easy. Not from a creature that's lived her whole life out here." They began the walk back toward the truck, the forest floor soft beneath their boots. A breeze rustled the branches overhead, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth. Birds chattered in the canopy, their morning chorus bright and full of promise. For a moment, everything felt exactly as it should be. But as they reached the edge of the clearing, a sudden prickling sensation ran down Lauren's spine. Subtle at first, then sharper, like an intuition tugging at her sleeve. She paused, turning back toward the clinic, the feeling intensifying with each breath. Something was waiting for her. Something she had missed. The Pine Ridge Clinic looked different when they returned. Quiet, calm, almost too still. The parking lot was empty. The wind chimes near the entrance sighed with the passing breeze. But as Lauren stepped inside, she felt the shift immediately. A letter, sitting on the floor, just inside the door. The envelope was plain, slightly crumpled, as if slid under quickly. There was no name on it, no stamp, only a faint crease down the middle, like someone had gripped it too tightly before letting it go. Evan picked it up carefully. "This wasn't here when we left, right?" Lauren shook her head. "No, it definitely wasn't." Roy's expression darkened. "Open it." Inside the envelope was a single object, small, cold, metallic. It fell into Lauren's palm with a soft clink that seemed to echo far too loudly in the quiet room. A bullet. But not just any bullet. The same caliber, the same shape, the same markings as the fragment they had removed from the bobcat mother. Except this one was whole, untouched, and its pointed tip was angled down, like a warning. Below it lay a small scrap of paper, torn from something rough. On it, in hurried handwriting, were 4 words: "Stay out of it." Lauren felt her breath catch. Evan ran a hand through his hair, pacing in a tight circle. Roy's jaw tightened so hard she could see the muscle twitch. "Whoever shot her," Roy muttered, "they're back, and they're watchin'." Lauren clenched the bullet in her fist, not out of fear, but out of something harder, sharper. "They left this here to scare us," she said, voice low. "But why now, after she's already gone?" "Maybe they didn't want her tracked," Evan guessed. "Or maybe they didn't know she'd survived." Roy shook his head. "Or maybe they're sending a message because they know exactly what she meant when she walked to your door." Lauren looked at the bullet again. The weight of it felt wrong, like holding a piece of darkness. She set it on the counter carefully, then steadied herself with both hands. "We did our job," she whispered. "We saved her. We saved her baby, but this—" She gestured to the bullet. "This isn't about them anymore." Evan swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Lauren exhaled slowly, her shoulders straightening. "We report it. We tell the ranger station, the sheriff, everyone who needs to know." Her voice grew stronger. "And we watch. If someone is hunting bobcats for sport, or for something worse, we won't ignore it." Roy nodded approvingly. "You're right. That warning? It only tells me one thing." His eyes hardened. "Whoever did this is scared. Scared that Mother made it. Scared you found out what they did." A long silence filled the room as the three of them stood there, united by the weight of truth, bound by the responsibility they hadn't asked for but could no longer deny. Finally, Lauren walked to the window and looked out toward the distant tree line. The sun was rising fully now, casting the mountains in a warm, golden glow. Somewhere out there, the bobcat mother and her kitten were taking their first steps back into the life they nearly lost. Somewhere out there, hope still lived, and beyond that hope, danger still lurked. But Lauren didn't feel fear, not anymore. She felt purpose. "They survived," she whispered to the glass, "and that alone will change everything." Behind her, the tiny recovery room sat quiet and empty, its warmth lingering like the echo of a heartbeat. A reminder, a promise. And as a faint breeze stirred the chimes outside, Lauren's voice softened into the morning light. "Whatever you tried to destroy, it's stronger than you think." And the story, though ending here, left the dawn open, wide and waiting. A mother and child had returned to the wild. A truth had surfaced. And the forest, holding its secrets close, whispered the oldest message of all. Life endures. If this story touched your heart even a little, drop a simple 1 in the comments so I know you're here with me. And if you'd like more stories like this, stories of survival, hope, and the wild spirits that share our world, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what comes next.